as members of Parliament, and we believe it's the duty of Labour members of Parliament to be on a picket line. I support the RMT. I support the RMT because they're a wonderful union, but because they're standing up for their members and they're standing up for their industry. This government poured billions into the private sector all through COVID, with no conditions whatsoever on most companies. No guarantees of jobs, no guarantees of protection, just protection for shareholders and the owners of those companies. The train operating companies received huge amounts of money to run services throughout COVID. RMT members worked throughout COVID, putting themselves at enormous risk. RMT members showed their determination to ensure that a public service was delivered and is always delivered. They are absolutely the lifeblood and centre of our Labour movement. So what is now happening? This government is now getting rid of a large number of railway staff and refusing a pay rise which will even keep up with the rate of inflation. So what they're doing is, post-COVID, punishing all those that did everything to keep the country running and to keep services running, by throwing them on the scrap heap, by refusing wages, so that we have falling living standards and falling incomes all over the country. The RMT have shown the right thing to do is stand up and say to this government, no, we are not having it. We demand decent levels of pay, we demand job guarantees, we demand investment in our services. The other point I'd make is this. Had we been in office and won an election, by this time all of the train operating companies would be part of the railway system in public ownership. So there wouldn't be any need to bail out shareholders, because there wouldn't be any shareholders. It would be a publicly owned industry. And so what the Tories are doing is pouring money into the private sector and destroying the public sector at the same time. So our job is to stand up against them. But what I wanted to also praise is the RMT for the leadership they've shown, and the fantastic leadership shown by the General Secretary of the RMT this week. Skewering one Tory minister after another. He's absolutely on a roll, and we've got to all get behind the RMT, because it's not going to stop there. If the RMT are not successful in defending jobs and ensuring there is a decent pay rise, then you know what's going to happen next. They're going to come after the civil servants. They're going to come after the teachers. They're going to come after local government workers. That is where it all leads to, because this is a Tory government that is determined to continue the rebalancing of our society in favour of the rich and powerful against the majority. I think we all know which side we're on. That's why we're here this morning. And it's also about our future. It's also about the future of young people, because our young people, full of brains, enthusiasm, imagination, full of ideas in science, in arts, in music, and so many things. And what happens to them? Over-tested and overstressed in school, over-indebted because they want to go to college and university. And then the housing is not available for them, so they end up being pushed into the private sector, which is massively expensive. And it breaks my heart to see young people in their 20s and 30s burdened with debt when they ought to be full of hope for their own future. Let's build a society fit for the next generation. Let's build a society where those young people can look forward with hope. Because the alternative is what? We continue with this whole process of privatisation and cuts. We continue with this whole process of damaging working class living standards, driving people into poverty. A country with more food banks than branches of McDonald's frankly should be ashamed of itself for that situation. But it's also the nastiness of the way they approach everything, the way there's always somebody else to blame. They blame asylum seekers, they blame refugees, they blame migrants, they blame the poor, they blame everybody, except their whole agenda, which is what we know it is, redistribution of power and wealth in favour of those that already have more than they know what to do with. We live in a grotesquely divided world, and we're creating a grotesquely divided society here in Britain. Our solidarity is with the rail workers, as all those years ago our solidarity was with the miners at demonstrations here and all over. And we never forget the sacrifices made. The brother here with the Orgreave t-shirt on, that was what the Tories did to the miners at Orgreave. Ian has one on as well. So we don't forget those injustices, and we go forward, learning from our past, be strong for the present, but absolutely determined for the future. But you know what? We're going to win this thing. We're going to win this thing because of the solidarity of RMT members, because of the support and solidarity all around the country. We're going to win this thing, and in winning this thing, we will get better education, we'll get better housing, we'll get better schools, we'll get a cleaner world and a better environment, and we'll defeat those who want to divide us, the racists who only know the language of division and hate. Ours is one of unity, solidarity, respect for those that went before, and build that better world for the future. Thank you very much.